All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 9 of Tactical Crouch. That's right. We're 9 in. Almost to double digits, fam. This is going to be a good one, I think. Why, Discord, do you tell me these things after? Anyways. Hey, we've got a special guest on the show today. Of course, Yiska, Volamel here. I'm KickedTripod. But we brought a real big brain on the show today. I mean, I can't even begin to list the accomplishments here. So, Peak, I'll let you do it. I mean, you've got a former coach with the Dallas Fuel. You've done a ton of things in condensers. I've been talking about microphones too much lately. Tons of things in contenders. You're streaming now, which is awesome. I was telling you before, I'm like, I don't watch a whole lot of Overwatch streams anymore, but Peaks is easily one of my go-tos. So first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for finally somebody said yes to us. I'm just kidding. Everybody says yes. Everybody says yes.
Nah, it's really fun to be on the show because I try to watch it as often as possible, and if I can't catch it live, I go on YouTube. And I don't skip a minute. Not even a second.
Wow.
Well, all right. You're on for good every week now. You say the best way, if you don't have time to watch the show throughout the week, the best way to catch the show live is to be on the show. It's the best way to do it. So you totally life hacked your way into it. So now you don't have to go through and watch it this week. You're like, yeah, I was on it. So no big deal. We've got a lot of great topics this week. We're going to talk about Kib and Nero going to Guangzhou. Only Wish on Hangzhou, Gray to Paris. We're going to talk to Peak a little bit about big brain coach things. And then we might even have a little bit of time to talk about, we haven't talked about the Hangzhou Spark or the Vancouver expansion teams yet and what they're looking to potentially bring to the table here. So that's going to be, it's going to be a packed show, but it's going to be a little bit shorter than normal. Blame me. So let's go ahead. First, let's just talk about our weeks a little bit. Yiska, what do you, have you put out 10 videos this week like you did last week?
I was lazy in the sense that I haven't actually released any videos, but one, I think, this week.
Wow.
Or not even this week, but yeah, I'm working on something. It just takes a while to realize and learn some new skills in order to get them done. But yeah, I think this is actually a good one. I took some of the feedback and we'll see how it turns out.
When does that one go live, or is it already live?
No, it's not live. Maybe tomorrow. We'll see.
You just decide, wake up, stretch, put on your clogs and be like, yeah, today's the day.
Yeah, not clogs. But yeah. But basically, I just work on a video, and if it's fine enough, I'm also wanting to up the production value a little bit. But yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Pete, what about you, man? What's going on in your world these days?
I've just been trying to make content, stream, and I want to give back to the community, so I do VOD reviews, and it helps me keep myself sharp with coaching skills, also breaking down VODs, and I get a chance to talk with the community, help people learn more about Overwatch, and I'm just happy to help people. And yeah, that's all I do. I try to work as hard as possible.
Opposite of me.
How can you not love that?
I know. I'm like, oh God, I love it.
Wait, what do you mean? I immediately hated it when he started.
Yeah, I know. I saw you immediately fall asleep. Like, oh God, people. Oh no, can't interact.
That's funny. All right, Joe. I guess I gotta ask you, what are you up to?
Yeah, I know, the dreaded. I mean, other than Chinese Overwatch, doing Contenders desk work, just released some lore stuff because
Saw that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I've been a secret fan, and I started like reading into it a little, so it was kind of interesting. Yeah, other than that, just kind of planning content, working on content. Yeah, just doing the old usual.
Nice. All right. Well, I mean, I was out of town this last week. Oh, I missed my desk. I got my new desk. I'm totally a homebody. And I finally have my desk, right? And we talked about this last week. And I can move it up and down and have all this space now for activities. And literally a day later, we go to Texas for 5 days. And I'm back with like really crappy internet. Everything's concrete in Houston, apparently. Everything is just made out of concrete. It's just like a giant parking ramp of a city. So that was not the greatest.
Is that why Houston will hit rock bottom this season?
Son of a... Are you kidding me? We didn't even make it 2 minutes and you're already... All right. Anyways. Yeah, so we did that. Unfortunately, Katie's grandma went to the hospital during that time. So then I spent like 2.5 days in a hospital. Also made of concrete, by the way. If anyone was wondering, it's just all concrete. I don't know.
I'm crazily proud of Americans who learned to not build houses just out of ticky-tacky that just blows off at the slightest wind.
Yeah.
Proud of you guys.
Well, not a whole lot of wolves huffing and puffing about, Yiska, but, fair enough. All right,
Why are you both on?
I don't know. I was trying to catch the ball. Let's talk about Overwatch stuff. Joe, what's going on with Guangzhou here?
Oh, Guangzhou.
Good old Guangzhou.
They're an interesting team. They've got the good old Metabellum core. Obviously, this is all public now, so we can actually talk about this and have some proper speculation. So they've brought over 4 former members of Metabellum: Happy, Rio, Chara, and Wanjie Lee. They've also got Shu coming over. They've got Kib, Nero, Eileen, and Only Wish. Obviously, Kib being from the UK.
Only Wish.
Not Only Wish?
No, he was.
Oh, that's
Guangzhou. Yeah,
that's my mistake.
Yeah,
but it's interesting because that is what's on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the Bible.
That's true.
Uh-oh.
And literally they have Only Wish on Guangzhou.
Oh, really? Am I mixing up stuff?
You might be missing it up. They have Only Wish.
Let's see.
Tagged.
If it's Eileen's team,
they have Only Wish tagged in the tweet.
Look, am I right?
Right.
Am I wrong? What's
you are right?
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Big pog, as the kids say.
Yeah, I'm done.
So it's like my biggest take, and again, me and Yiska debated on this. I think it was last episode or 2 episodes ago. I just don't see how the team communicates. It would be interesting to see if they chose Korean as their language of choice, but it's tough for me to kind of envision that, and that's again like what I always draw back to. But I do have to say it's a very flexible roster, very global. It's very Philadelphia Fusion-esque, where they've kind of done their fair share of scouting, which I appreciate. But I have some worries about that team. Obviously, Kib kind of caught everybody by surprise. Now he's coming in again. Fantastic player. Wish him nothing but the best. But the team as a whole, I don't know exactly how to feel. I'm kind of torn.
Peak, I want to hear from you on this one. So, I mean, this roster in general. Joe just brought up his concerns about communication. I mean, as a coach, I'm sure that's probably a major hurdle that you have to consider whenever you're coaching a team. What do you think about this team overall? And I would especially love to hear your thoughts on language gaps and the perhaps the type of hurdles it can present for teams, especially at the highest level.
Yeah, so the thing that sticks out the most to me is that they have mixed like a ton of variation in the nationalities. So it's a Chinese team with a Korean core, and they have outer parts, or like the more added, like how do you say it, like addition or like additives are like Chinese, American, and UK. The cultures, like especially in how you play in Overwatch, in esports in general, is kind of colliding with each other. For example, Chinese teams in Overwatch and other esports, they usually want to be aggressive and always play attack basically. But for Korean teams, they would usually want to be systematic in the sense that they play whatever is the strongest, or like pragmatic, I guess. And you focus on the theory of what's like most practical. And then for NA and UK, it's sort of the same, where you trial and error, and you go out with whatever style you end up with. And it's going to be interesting to see how they solve not only the language barriers. The language barriers is going to be a problem on its own, because you have 5 players who are the core. I guess the Koreans are the core. So the rest will adapt to the Koreans, or that's most likely. And then the same with the way you handle problems in the team. For example, it's going to be the Korean way to solve problems, and not I'm not sure like how it'll go. It depends on the coaches as well, because I can't see the coaches on Wikipedia, but we have to assume that they have Korean staff or a Korean foundation in the staff. And then if they have someone that can help the Chinese players and the Western players to integrate them into the Korean team, then it's going to be totally fine, I think. But that's the hardest part, integrating them and making them operate on the same level as if it was a full Korean team or a full Western team or a full Chinese team. I don't think they will do any worse than, for example, a Western team that's mixed with Koreans. I think they will have the same amount of chance. And if they have good like tutors for Korean, it's gonna work out, I think. I'm more concerned about the way of playing Overwatch, like aggro versus non-aggro.
I mean, Yiska, what do you think? Because you're like, you're the Korean purist here. You're the Korean master race type person. We've called you out for it many times. They're augmenting here quite a bit. No, you hate it. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, like, I mean, what are your thoughts here, especially with Gosu? Like, I mean, and I definitely want to hear your thoughts, Peak, just kind of on like where you think they'll land. But I want to hear Yiska's thoughts first. Just kind of about. Oh my God, David. Okay, David, you got my attention.
Good Lord.
Thank you for the many gifted subs. I said I wouldn't break up the show to thank him for the subs, and then he just did.
You got it on that.
Yeah, thank you, David. I really appreciate it. We're
Thanks.
We're stopping the whole show for you. So
fifth guest.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you again. Anyways, Yiska, back to you. What are your thoughts on this Guangzhou roster?
So, as of course the Korean fanboy here, my mind immediately went to, can you actually play for Korean? And compositionally, not only do they only have 6 Koreans, but it's also that they, of course, overlap on some positions. But the problem really is I guess we have to talk about the elephant in the room in this team as well. Even though he's, of course, a sick talent, I expect Happy to be banned for some of the start of the season as a known booster. Formerly called Vesta, I could totally see that he has to sit out for some games. So then you're in a position where you now have to play non-Korean DPS players. So that immediately, I mean, DPS, it is hard to say, and it's also how you want to, how your calling structure falls just by the individuals you have or what your coaching idea is. But yeah, it's you cannot avoid playing something else than Koreans here unless they add someone. So they will have to find it somewhere. I also disagree to a point in saying that this won't be harder than a Western team with Koreans, because I think most of the Western players know a decent amount of English. You probably can't make it to Overwatch League being a Western player without having English, because there's always, especially in Europe, you have to have one language. But it's also that you then can sort of meet in the middle. Some learn some Korean, some learn some English words, and sort of, like share the effort. But that is not possible with three types of languages there, or much harder. Or I'm not sure how much harder it is, but yeah. And then there's always what is always going or described to me in calling structure is that, yes, you can have like a sheet with all the positions and all the hero names and the interactions, but there are some things in communication and language where you need to explain concepts that you couldn't have scrimped for. So particular pathing or something like this. And these properties require a certain amount of language that there's always going to be friction with mixed teams. And this, therefore, probably also is one of the teams that won't do as well in the early stages, but then will probably ramp up as language improves and as synergy improves, because some things also don't need to be said as players play together. But yeah, I think there might actually be a bit of a problem. But in terms of talent itself, I'm actually quite happy, especially Eileen happy, both nuts players. Wonjae Lee is also someone that people have been looking on, even though Shu might actually start ahead of him, which I found interesting when I heard that. And then Chara is one of the better performers. So in general, this also is why I thought they were better than Chengdu, because they actually have star level power.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sorry.
I mean,
I'm
star level
distracted
power
by chat right now.
I feel like star level power kind of falls to the wayside when you can't have everyone buy into it, just because of like language barriers and cultural like differences, where something's prone to happen even in teams that are all Korean or all Western or this, that, the other thing. Like, issues are bound to arise. And I feel like the hardest thing for a team to get over is even just talking about it is an issue. Like, just the act of trying to work through a problem is difficult because of the language barrier, right? So like, you have a cultural or a possible cultural like issue where, you name it. We've seen it in, season 1. Players aren't plug and play. They have personalities. They come from different cultures. They have different beliefs than, other. So when those sparks do fly, you already are at a disadvantage because you can't just try to work through it. There's already a barrier there. So like, you can just say, hey, grab a translator, but that's still so frustrating. I can imagine from a player's perspective, or even just like my own, personal perspective, like trying to communicate through a translator. And it's just infuriating to try and like I just want to speak to you. I'm trying to communicate to you. Like, I don't want to talk to this guy and then hope that he or this person and hope that they can wrap their head around what I'm trying to say and then communicate it in a way that makes sense to the other person. Like, there's already so many barriers that I'm worried.
Yeah, it's all these like unspoken social cues, and I guess really good reference to it is like, it's like texting without emojis with a random person that you have never met before, and they don't, or if you're having different opinions about something and you try to discover each other's opinions, it can easily end up like a heated discussion, like on Reddit, when it's just simple misunderstandings because they automatically think from the way they interpret like a cue, and then the other end differently, and it's exactly like you guys say.
Yeah. If you wanted a Yiska analogy, I was thinking having spotty language is sort of like playing in super low resolution, where when you start out, it's almost playing like chess, where you only have like very high resolution pieces where you move around your pieces and you can only say, okay, A2 and whatever. And then, like, for instance, if you're missing the language, everything is behind us on top, right? Like these problems. And as you get better, the resolution clears up. We have better names for the specific, like smaller things, much more granular, and then we get a full picture. And yeah, I'm not even sure if getting the full resolution, if you want, is possible over an entire season. But then again, there might be other positive attributes within split rosters, because it is peculiar that over at least Overwatch League Season 1, the split rosters did actually pretty well. If you're thinking of Boston, if you're thinking of Valiant, if you're thinking of Gladiators, of course, Fusion, these teams all did fairly well. While, okay, we will see how it will go in the future, because admittedly, we didn't have full Korean rosters, like a lot of them, let's say. And those that were full Korean, also 2 of the 3 did it pretty well.
So, I mean, and that's usually when someone brings up the language barrier gap, that's the only thing I say is because I honestly don't know. I'm not qualified enough to like say like, oh yeah, it's a huge difference, because I don't play with people who don't speak my language very often at a high level and practice with them and know what can be achieved in that amount of practice time. But what I do know is when you look at Overwatch League, there's a lot of split rosters who did quite well. And you can either attribute it to everybody had really good translators and all that stuff, or there's just the level of the emphasis that we put on the language barrier is either isn't quite as big or is more easily overcome than people lead it to believe, because it's such a quick one-liner.
Sure, exactly.
It's something that brings up, people are like, oh, we're going to see how they do because, 2 of these guys are Chinese, the rest are Korean. How are they going to do? How are they going to address it? People immediately misattribute that to being a huge hurdle or obstacle when maybe it might not actually be that. And that's usually the only thing that I kind of say.
I'm like 100%. I can't agree with you more there. And I have content on this subject coming out within sometime this week where I kind of explore it further and I provide examples, and like everything we've basically already said, like is in it, which is shocking, kind of fun, but I don't want to misrepresent them in saying that like because there are issues day one, then they're just doomed, right? It just worries me as someone who tries to give at least a relatively like even keel opinion on things, that there could be issues. And that's not to say that mixed rosters definitely, can't work, right? Yeah. Obviously they can. We've seen it in multiple esports that you can overcome these barriers. And on paper, the team looks really good, like individual basis, like very flexible, quite a roster. Everybody is like mechanically very gifted. I just worry that when the going gets tough for them because they're just so different, and it's not like Philadelphia Fusion where it's like everybody comes in, they can at least speak English. Like, yeah, you have cultures, but at least you can communicate through your problems. This team, again, like I feel like it could be their problems could be exacerbated by their language barrier. It's not to say that I'm not trying to say that they'll be the worst team ever.
Yeah.
By no means am I.
It's also just something that every team with mixed rosters, they have to address. You can't ignore it. And so, like, I agree, the conversation should always be there for mixed rosters, is can they address it? And that's one of the first things that they have to do well to address, I think.
But you shouldn't just write them off and saying like, you know what I mean? Yeah, I completely agree with you in saying that like, oh, they don't speak the same language, 15. Like, that's not fair to them. Like, they're more than just, a culture or a language. Like, they can play the game. They kind of like have a general idea of what's going on. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't, this is the one team that I'm like, I want to be really good. and I think they can be, but I have this gut feeling that I think something's going to happen and they're never going to recover from it.
See, this is my Boston team where last season I said it. It's funny. I put Boston as 6 in the preseason rankings. And I didn't know a whole lot about rankings, but it made me look really smart at the end until I mentioned that. But and I actually did I think, Joe, you were one of the people who did, it was with High Noon Podcast. Their blog, they did those preseason rankings. I think you or Yiska or somebody, like there was a lot of really smart people, and then me in there, and I actually got my rankings more right, knowing less, like kind of thing. But they're kind of my Boston team in the sense that, like, I feel like if there's any team that has like the ability to like surprise and really come together and look really great, and finish in that, high 25%, like it's this team, because I've gotten to see the Chinese players quite a bit firsthand, but I also, have followed Korean contenders enough to know these other players. And I'm like, this could be a team. I don't think that they overpaid for any of them. I think like financially, this is probably like a really solid team. And so I kind of have faith in the infrastructure that they'll put around them. But B, it's kind of like it's a little bit of a value play, I think, here, and I think that we've seen that actually work out better, in Overwatch League in a lot of situations. So that's my closing thoughts. I want to talk Peak. I want to talk to you because Yiska and Joe both have some questions for you. I want to give you a platform to do that. Yiska, I'll let you take your question first here. Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the important aspects that we will find out over this season, I think, is how important is Overwatch League experience for players as well as coaches, right? And then, of course, yes, the factors that could produce an advantage, such as knowing what kind of a grind it is, and knowing these eventualities, is sort of diminished by the less rigorous and less hard season, having 12 games less and whatever. But do you still think? So if I think of two similarly skilled players just from the eye test within contenders and then within the Overwatch League, and even disregarding against what kind of opposition they do it as, because, for instance, contenders Korea players probably not that much worse than the average in Overwatch League, if so, not by much. Do you think we still have to value the experience of the Overwatch League players as well as coaches considerably? And would you expect that, like, people we think of as average in season 1 will just be better or up leveled by their experience from season 1?
So I guess there's like 2 parts. First part is the players like inside and those outside. I think those inside, yes, you want to value them more, and that's because even if they themselves haven't reflected on the experience, like consciously, they have subconsciously processed like every experience, every struggle, every thing that went well. And those in contenders, they haven't faced the same thing. Like, if you would play in Apex and grind through Apex, like the group stages, prepare like in scrims, like for months and months, you scrim the same thing, that's still more experience than, for example, what you face in contenders. Because in contenders, you have this league format, very new players who also end up just copying each other. They don't understand how to practice a lot of the times, especially in the West, less so in Korea. And in the West, for example, you still see teams scrim with each other without even planning what maps to scrim. And it happened a lot in OWL as well. And if you would bring up that like as a request before OWL, people wouldn't accept it because it's too weird, it's too new, or they don't see the point in it. And same with players. And then could you repeat the second question?
Oh yeah, with coaches, do you think having been a coach in season 1 is a big advantage?
Yeah, I definitely think so. So the harsher environment, the better. That's usually what I think of for myself. It's not the way of thinking everyone should have. But if, for example, if you're a coach or a player even, and you can reflect back on what went really bad for you, you will be able to step up and make a better performance in season 2. But then we can't assume that every coach can do that or will do that or even knows how to do it. So I don't think it's the same thing for coaches, because they don't have the same trial and error or instant feedback as players have. And a lot of the coaches like now, like that one part of coaching or growing as a coach, you have to rely on branding, networking, and all that, and that takes away attention from building on yourself as a person. And so you might have people who are unknown in trials to contenders, or even in contenders, regardless of what region, that are really, really good at working with people and have really developed personal skills, and they don't even need to know anything about the game to make a difference in teams. For example, a veteran from sports psychology, they can come in and solve any internal issue in any team that any coach right now wouldn't be able to. Possibly, like, obviously, there's stuff they can't solve. But
so what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, like famous philosopher Kelly Clarkson said.
No, not exactly like it's more like
no, not like Kelly Clarkson. No,
I see. I look at it like a trial of fire, basically. So in season 1, those who survived the trial of fire basically got initiated. Okay, you are on this level. Even if you didn't get first place, you managed the stress from it. Like, you didn't back out and like drop the career and everything, because like you still expose yourself and you're ready to expose yourself to more. And I think that's a really valuable thing. So those who were in season 1 and have that attitude to season 2 are going to be better coaches than those from contenders with the same way of attitude, I think. If that's a good answer. I'm not sure. It's kind of a tough question to answer.
Yeah, because that's one of my big questions when not only evaluating the rosters, but also just like, how do you even build for that? If you can just assume a value for them, but that would, for instance, like there were a lot of players in season 1 of the Overwatch League that didn't get to play a lot, but did they, for instance, despite like not playing a lot, did they still feel the same amount of pressure? So, for instance, Valiant had a lot, right? So, do I value Finzi now a lot more, or even though he came in pretty late, admittedly, and players like that is a big question mark to me. How I, would build a team if I was a GM, right?
Yeah,
I'd say, like, there's no proof, like proof of concept or like proven track record. Like, even if someone played but failed, let's say that someone like from Shanghai Dragons, you can still work with those players and make them grow from the mistakes they did or whatever. But a player that hasn't even been on stage, that's going to be hard, because it's like betting, or like the old school esports approach. Like, you go into a casino and you basically either win or you lose. And I think a lot of management, like a lot of teams the teams that have a lot of good management skills or like training are going to be able to deal with the unfortunate results a bit better than those that don't have it. So basically, I think that's why, for example, Fusion are really good, because the ownership has a ton of like foundation from other companies and all that, that they probably apply. And
That's sometimes I thought about the Fusion case in particular, right? And I'm not sure how that was for other teams, but of course for Fusion it was very visible, and it might be a seemingly random point, but from my time in the military, we in German have a saying which is ohne Mampf kein Kampf, which means without proper food, there's no fight, right? And I wonder how much morale is kept by just having, proper living situations. They had a pretty cool house. They had, from the looks of it, very good food. The structure of it all, even though there were, of course, as every team had, frictions within the house, I think the structure was able to at least, keep them functional and to be there when it mattered, right? So,
it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, you won't be able to go to the top and become or pursue like the like highest potential of whatever you are the most interested in without shelter, without food, without personal relations and all that. And it's like barriers basically have to break.
Yeah.
And you can skip steps. That's how I see it, at least.
And I love it when you and Yiska speak philosophy. Lets me remember how dumb I am.
Just sat here with my low brain plasticity and my smooth, non-rigid peanut brain.
I said this was a big brain podcast, but man, that was huge. Huge brain.
Galaxy brain.
Joe, I think you had a question too, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, because I do participate in some Chinese Overwatch. I am I have volunteered to wear that mantle, and they're very different. I've been meaning to make content around this, but it feels like they just view the game so differently that it's kind of interesting. And I wanted to kind of get your take on not specifics, but more of, do you think, and we had talked about this a little bit when we did our interview and then in the pre-show, but do you think people are too beholden to their kind of ideas of what is good, and there isn't a ton of like innovation or just exploration of like parts of the map or hero compositions? Like, do you think that in Overwatch League we're kind of stuck in our ways in a sense, where if like we see something that's successful, we just try to replicate it and there isn't much of a style there? Do you think that that's kind of an issue, or just kind of your take on experimentation and that kind of thing?
So early on, before today, or like let's say 2 years ago, when I just started out coaching, so I was 1 year in, then I would think it's a problem. But right now, I think more it's something that happens in any field. It's basically like if you think of a box or any frame, to expand that frame. Oh no. Let's just model the frame, and then you have good things, then you have bad things in some other place. And let's say that it takes some form of effort to go for the good things and less effort to go for the bad things, because it automatically falls to the bottom. But now if you want to expand that frame and make it bigger, you have to rely on the people that have the discipline, the time, and the dedication to expand, grind out that space. Basically, it's like all the beta players that screamed for 16 hours a day or 18 hours a day for months on end, that then set the foundation for us later. If they, if no one goes in and really tries to pursue new depths of Overwatch or whatever field, like math, science, you won't get new concepts really quickly. It's going to be over time, slowly. And it's the same as discovering things in science. You have to obsess and be ready to change your whole life. The same as if you want to take over a meta, for example, and you want to do it alone as a team, you basically have to forget having a ton of fun on the side, outside of scrims. You should be obsessing about the game. And not everyone can do it or should do it. For example, if you can't focus on getting food for the day, or like if you can't sleep, all these basic things. For example, I guess in China it was kind of dry on money for players, a lot of players, and they would almost starve trying to make it. And as harsh the conditions might be, for example, it forces people to really try their hardest, and that's probably how these creative solutions come to birth in China, because the whole region is also isolated, so they don't have Westerners or Koreans that come with super high skill and then just play the standard meta. And the easiest thing you can do in Overwatch or anywhere else is you just copy whatever someone did. And it's like inventing the new wheel or the new computer. Like that kind of a big idea is kind of hard to invent. And I don't think it's a problem. I think it's something that's just natural. Like people are gonna bring out new meta when the people who are dedicated to grind out the hours to research and discover everything are able to do it. Like if everyone hires no one that wants to work, then obviously nothing is going to happen. And someone on Reddit posts something, and then okay, everyone copies Reddit. Might be whatever, but yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah,
I think it's I don't think there's like a yes or no question to the
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
answer.
Yes or no?
A lot of it seems to be also sort of gambling in Overwatch League, what kind of approach you take. Because, okay, so on one hand, if you're the discoverer of new strategies, that might very well have a payoff, but how long does it last? It very much depends on the process you had in order to teach that to your players, and the more complicated the approach is, yes, the longer you can sustain that. At the same time, someone else might just come along and say, well, I have better executioners or executors in the specific strategy. Like maybe you have an advantage for, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks because you learned the comp quicker, but now we're catching up. While the value of that is very hard to evaluate simply because of patch cycles. So if there's a lot of patches, of course, the guy that's the discoverer and finds the best sort of meta solution that dominates the first solutions, they have a big advantage. And that is especially, that value is especially exacerbated by the fact that we had playoff patches, right? So that in itself might be a worthwhile person to keep around if it's one person that just, conceives of new meta approaches very well. But if that's a team mode, it's problematic if metas also, as they tend to historically stick around in Overwatch for very long. Mercy meta's very long, dive meta very long. Even like people are speculating if Goats is actually going to be the broth of the soup once we get into Overwatch League. So it's very hard to not only build but also to be adaptable in all these different situations. Yeah,
I guess the most effective way, I don't know if this is the best way, but you would have players that learn easily and implement things easily, because creativity always falls when it comes to implementation. The more creative something is, and the more it's very unlikely that everyone in a team is the top 0.1% of the highest level of creativity. So if you produce something that's extremely creative, it's also likely that not every player is going to accept it, because there's a certain level of openness every person has, and you have to shape it so that it fits everyone. But then instead of only having one person trying to break the meta, you can have one person trying to break the current meta, and then another person trying to work off whatever the current person is working on independently, without implementing it to the players yet. So you have some form of redundancy, basically, in case of it's basically like a failsafe. If a patch comes out, or if an opponent figures out a counter. then you have someone already working on something, and you cut off a lot of time. But then you have also, you need the proper hiring processes to find these people and all that, and it becomes really complex very quickly.
To Yiska's point, I wonder if, because the game has historically been so chaotic, does the issue of consistency for teams that want to play this counter style or just don't want to adapt the meta and always are trying to find a way out, do you think that really matters as much when you kind of look at how patches have affected the game and how consistently they come up? Do you think that, like in a game like, let's say, for instance, like StarCraft Brood War, right? It's very difficult to kind of reinvent things because everything is just held constant for so long. There's reinvention that happens, but it's definitely not as quick to change as a game like League of Legends or a game like Overwatch, where things are just added constantly. There's more novelty added, like they're like infinitely more chaotic. So do you think that matters as much?
No, I think you want. So I think if you remove the detail that it's a team countering or trying to get some way out, the core is basically that they learn quickly and they adapt quickly, and that's basically the same qualities you'd want in the players I described. That learns quickly, and so, for example, in Brood War, since patches don't happen all the time, you're eventually gonna come to the point where you have the most optimal plays you can do, and you can execute them in the most optimal way. But for Overwatch, for example, as long as the developers keep updating the game, you're not going to reach that point, because it's just like we aren't supercomputers that can. I don't know how to explain. I'm not that big brain, but
it makes sense.
There's like a lot of depth to Overwatch that's not discovered, and it also depends on how, for example, much of it the players understand, and then how well they understand each other, and then if just like if a player has eaten bad one day or is feeling down, it's setting stop for hitting the optimal conditions, and it's kind of hard to reach the optimal conditions. And I'd say it's good to try and counter. Like, that's a way to win. But if you can reinvent stuff or like break the meta all the time, like, and play to your strengths, that's the best way, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to start another topic because I don't think we'll be able to get through it all. Man, Peak, I can't thank you enough for being here. Like, so much great insight on this episode. So thank you.
I'm just.
Don't be modest. Don't be modest.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud. So like.
Yeah, no, I love it. I honestly love it. I'm like, I wish we would do one of our normal hour-and-a-half episodes. That's my bad. We'll have you on again though, for sure. like, let's just see if he's around next week, Joe. Let's just see if that's a thing, and we'll do it. And we'll actually get to talk about some teams and things too, because oh man, I would love to hear your thoughts, like specifically on some players and some teams. But I really can't thank you enough. For people who are listening to the show who maybe aren't following you yet, where can everybody find you online for your stream, Twitter, and everything else?
It's at GoSoPeak on Twitter, at GoSoPeak on Twitch, and Peak Coaching on YouTube. And then anywhere else, it's GoSoPeak.
All right, listen here, everybody. Go make sure you follow those channels, okay? Just do it. Just do it. If you have to, unsubscribe to Yiska. I don't care. Just make sure you... All right. Yeah. Yiska's not in the mood today, man. I hit a button with him today.
Finite amount of subscribers that you...
Sorry, my friends list is full.
I know, my sub list is full, man. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, do whatever you have to. Unfollow. Don't unfollow this show. Yeah. Let's see, who else can you unfollow? Flame isn't doing any things anymore, so you could probably unfollow Flame. Joe, what? He hasn't posted a video in months.
No,
Big
Joe
eyes
was about to
emoji for
say
me.
that Joe was about to say that he never was subscribed.
No, I was early on, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Nah.
we're just playing around. Flame, come on the
No,
show
Flame's a
anytime you
good
want. Besides that, Joe, what are you up to this week, man?
Other than my Guangzhou piece that's in the mix, what do I got going on? Chinese Contenders every weekend at the crack of dawn. Come watch. We have quad DPS versus single tank Roadhog compositions. If you like weird, crazy Overwatch, come hang out. Be merry. If you like Pharah, we had a lot of Pharah last week. It was fun. Give us a rascal. No, ain't happening. Thank you, Twitch chat. I'm out.
Seaweed. Yiska, what about you, man? What are you up to this week?
Yeah, probably just doing the one video I talked about in the beginning. Yeah,
All right.
just that.
Cool. All right. As for me, I'm actually going to start streaming. I'm really excited. I'm finally in a place where I can start streaming again. I used to love streaming, and then I was moving and transitioning to a new job and everything. I just never had time for it. So I'm going to be starting streaming up again. Make sure to follow on twitch.tv/KickedTripod. Big thank you to David HD, capital Z, David HD, for the many gifted subs, by the way. That was very generous of you. All that kind of stuff goes to support the content we're creating here, goes to support the show. I know we're talking about webcam upgrades and microphone upgrades and all that stuff. And so all of that goes to support that. So if you're like, hey, besides following and watching and listening, how can I support the show? Come hang out with us on Twitch. Subs on Twitch, anything there is great. I think like PayPal is listed there, but I don't want to say like give us money because honestly, just you listening, watching, hanging out with us is so much support already. But yeah, so my stream schedule is going to be a little bit wonky this week, but I will be back streaming Fortnite, Call of Duty, Overwatch. We'll see what sticks here. I've got like a whole brand new setup. I figured out NDI. Have any of you guys streamed with NDI before?
Mm-mm.
So I have an iMac Pro over here. It's like a $5,000 computer. My wife works at Apple, so again, don't think I paid $5,000 for a computer. But it's a really nice computer, and it's got a really beefy processor. But there's like no capture cards that let me have like 144 hertz, all that kind of stuff that goes to a Mac, and I don't want to really boot camp it, and it's all USB-C, and it's just kind of weird. It's just not optimal. So there's this technology called NDI that lets me like over my network send everything over to this. We're using it right now. We've been using it for the whole stream, and it looks great, sounds great, has very minimal impact on my computer over here. Like right now, it's taking less than 10% of my processing power, like which is amazing. And that's for like two monitors set up here, and yeah, it was it's just really cool. So I'm going to be testing that out, kind of seeing how it runs in a long 3, 4, 5, 6 hour stream environment. So thank you again. Remember, you can follow the show everywhere. Just search for Tactical Crouch. Spotify, it's there. YouTube, it's there. RSS feeds, it's there. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, it's there. Yeah, it's everywhere. So just search for Tactical Crouch. If for some reason it doesn't show up, search for Overwatch League Daily. We're also on Twitter at OWL Daily Show. Follow Peak at Gosu Peak. Volamel at Volamel. Yiska at Yiska out.
And KickedTripod at KickedTripod.
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 Oh no.
KickedTripod. Yeah. All right. So anyways, thank you guys again for being here. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. I appreciate it. Peak, thank you again.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and get out of here. Whew. We're out. See ya.
Joe, knock knock.
Who's there?
Yiska.
Yiska who?
Lord Yiska in 8 months, bro!
I thought you said you're memeing. What just happened?
I have no idea.
Peak, I don't understand.
You forgot the Lord bet?
I just don't know what happened, chat. Yeah. Yiska, I love you.
Thanks.
See you guys next week.